Staying with our top story, this Workers' Day, the Ombudsman for Banking Services is advising South Africans to be aware of their rights when it comes to dealing with financial institutions. The Ombud plays a critical role in mediating challenges between consumers and banks. Fraud, banking errors and even estate matters are brought to their table. They say it's critical at this time, especially considering tough economic conditions. The Ombud's Reana Steyn speaks to us now. Reana, thank you so much for your time this evening. Now, amid the global cost of living crisis, with creditors, retailers, the taxman, Eskom, all demanding their pound of flesh, many banking customers feel that banks are also in line for their share of our hard-earned pay. But you say that consumers should trust that banks are there to serve the best interests of consumers. How have banks come to the party to help their clients?
Good evening. Yeah, I think it is important to know that the banks are there to retain their customers and to serve their customers. Now, sometimes when a customer feels aggrieved, they may feel that that's not the purpose of the bank and not their goal. But that's not really the way we see it when we deal with the complaints. And yes, they're not infallible. They make mistakes. There are human errors and there are technical errors. But the whole point of even an office like ours is that they set it right. That's the whole point. And that is what we see when we deal with them. So they are there to assist their customers, especially in tough economic times. We advise people all the time to go and talk to the banks early on. If they see their budget is not going to make it, if they see they cannot repay their loans, do not wait, do not default, do not turn to machinistas. Rather go and talk to your bank. Some people, they don't have a relationship with the banks anymore, and I think we are really encouraging people at this time, in the tough economic times, to re-establish the relationship, the trust relationship with the banks. That's a much better way to go about it than to default, to try and hide and run away from debts.
Such a big part of that relationship has to be communication. And when we see more and more digitization, banks trying to digitize in terms of taking the load off their in-bank consultants, that might be very difficult to have a relationship with your bank when you're just another number and when you have to deal with bots. What's the role of the Ombud in trying to make sure that banks communicate clearly and often with their clients?
Well, of course, our role is at the end when there's a problem. So if there's already a problem that's arisen and people cannot resolve it and they agree by what the bank has done or not done, they turn to us and we are there to assist the customer to resolve this problem. But throughout, we always, encourage the bank, and whenever we see that there wasn't clear communication, we advise them that that is a problem we picked up, and we encourage them, or we even see to it that they set it right. We sometimes see that the whole problem arose because somebody misunderstood or there wasn't clear communication about the product or the service. And if that is the complaint that came to us, we will make sure that we not only resolve that one complaint, we always also talk to the bank and say that something went wrong in the process and in their documentation, and they should change that. And we do see that they can do that. So, all is not lost if you do not go into the bank. I think a lot of people prefer that. They prefer to communicate on email or even on the phone. But the bank should be there still to see people in the bank, in the branches, for those customers who do want it. Maybe there are fewer branches, but they should really be available for anybody that wants to go and see their bank consultant in a branch.
What are some of the most common complaints that you receive?
Unfortunately, fraud is still the biggest problem for South African consumers. They fall victim to fraud all the time. And of course, then their money is lost. They either it's a phishing scam, a phishing, a phone call, people pretending to be from the bank, all sorts of scams. And that involves people paying over money to fraudsters. And then they turn to the bank asking them to assist. And sometimes it is possible. So all is not lost if the fraud is reported very quickly. Because if that money is still in the bank of the fraudster or even the account that the fraudster paid it over to, and they report it quickly enough, there is still an opportunity to maybe get that money back. So fraud, a big problem. And then also, I think misunderstandings about agreements, people not reading the agreements, not understanding the terms. And then, what creeps in is the human error and sometimes technical errors. And all it needs is somebody to pick up that there's a problem. The customer doesn't have to know exactly what the problem is. He needs to just understand something is not sitting right, the figures don't look right. And if the bank does not resolve that matter, they can come to us and we can assist with a complete recalculation, for example, on a bond amount. As we've said in our press release, we've seen a lot of complaints about estates and delays. And one by one, we're trying to assist the banks and encourage them to resolve the matters. But fraud is, unfortunately, still by far the biggest issue that we see.
In a dispute with the bank, an ordinary South African may feel they're David up against Goliath, very little or limited resources against a legal battalion with no hope of victory. How does the Office of the Ombud try and maintain that balance in dispute resolution to give South Africans back their voice and their power?
Well, I think that is exactly why we're there. So we have an office staffed with lawyers, and we are there as a free of charge service to customers who feel aggrieved by something the bank did, some product or service or something that went wrong. We always encourage customers to first raise the complaint with the bank and see if they can't resolve it. About 50% of matters that is raised with the bank directly from our estimation is resolved there and then, and we never see it. About another 50% is not resolved to the satisfaction of the customer. And then they can get us involved. So we pass on the file to one of the lawyers who has to do a proper investigation. Both parties will get an opportunity to put their case forward, the complaint on the one hand and the bank's response to the complaint on the other hand. And then, as I say, there are qualified people who are in the middle as an independent adjudicator to assist the customers. So really what you were saying earlier, the little man against the big corporation, that is exactly why there is a free service like our office where somebody can turn to. You do not have to go to a lawyer or pay money or go to court. If it's something that can be resolved out of court through negotiation or through, like I said, recalculation, anything like that, our office is there to assist the consumer and, of course, on the bank to repair the problem and repair the relationship. The banks do want to retain their clients. They do want to resolve problems. Reputation is very important to them as well, and customer retention. So there's definitely an incentive for them to resolve the matters. And then, of course, for the customer, for them, often it's a matter of money and often very serious for a customer. So they get us to assist them. And as I say, our service is free of charge, but we have qualified people on their side to investigate.
Roughly how many complaints do you deal with annually?
We receive about 8,000 formal complaints, and then there's about another 12,000 complaints that we assisted the consumers to lodge with the banks. So they contacted us, consumers, and they said, I've got a dispute. I haven't logged it with the bank, but please can you assist me to do that? And then we do that for them. We send it to the right place and we make sure that it's resolved one way or the other. So we keep an eye on those matters. And then, of course, the formal complaints where we do the whole investigation, about 8,000. And then, there's about another 40,000 phone calls where we telephonically assist consumers as well.
Well, I'm sure consumers are heartened to know that you are there to assist them. Thank you very much, Reana Steyn from the Ombudsman for Banking Services.